Hey, welcome to Company Growth Partner. My name is Jayson. I am a branding expert and digital marketer in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Matt, signing in from Bangkok, Thailand. I'm a revenue operations specialist and media buyer with a Facebook advertising portfolio of 7.8 million. What's that?
7.8 million. And we are here today to talk to you all about how we together generated $2 million for one coaching business in 13 months while operating from different parts of the world. Okay. And I think it makes sense for us to begin this conversation around you, Matt, as you are the creator of Company Growth Partner. You are the founder and CEO of Company Growth Partner. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about your history and how we got to where we got?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much to say, but probably a good way to start. I'm originally from Hungary. I have a degree in something called modern philology. It's also called like English and American Studies, right? Humanities degree, like what am I going to do with it? I always had a lot of passion for English speaking cultures and ended up leaving the country once I graduated at the age of 22. I had like $400 to my name, which actually came from my mother because I was not willing to work because I just wanted to study English and nothing else. So I ended up leaving at 22, moved to Scotland. I was in hospitality, stuck in hospitality for 3 years because speaking English in Scotland is not a valuable skill because everyone does it.
And what made you choose Scotland?
I like putting myself in extremely challenging situation. To my best knowledge, there wasn't a Hungarian community in Scotland, and also Scottish accent is extremely difficult to understand. So a lot of Eastern Europeans don't want to move up there because they don't like the accent because it's too hard, and I like hard. So I ended up moving up there with knowing very little about like the economic situation or anything. I just wanted to live in an English speaking country, and it's only a 3 hour flight from Hungary. So basically that's how I ended up there. Yeah.
And then what?
I lived in a small Scottish town. I worked at this cafe bar. Shout out to Cafe Bar 1912. I worked there for like 3 years, and I actually ended up getting this internship. Literally all I did was I searched for digital marketing agency Scotland, and then because this agency did SEO, they popped up. Oh crap, digital marketing in Scotland, because I actually figured out that maybe because I had good tech skills and I just like cultures in general, and that's why I studied English. Oh wait, social media marketing could be a thing. So I actually wanted to do that. Like I had a commitment even when I arrived in Scotland that that's what I want to do, and when I get out of hospitality, but I need to make money. So I ended up getting this internship, and the guy was super interested in, guess what? Facebook ads, because he didn't do it. Like he only did SEO for small businesses in Scotland, and he thought maybe doing social media marketing on top of it could make him more money. So he ended up buying like a Facebook advertising course for me for on like Udemy. So that's how I got started. Like zero, like no experience in marketing, no degree in marketing, nothing. Just, this sounds pretty interesting to me. So that's how I ended up doing digital marketing.
I mean, it's not dissimilar to how I fell into it. I mean, I was always interested in design. I've always been interested in branding. I studied all kinds of things, in college and was very interested in all versions of creativity. But I eventually fell into helping theater troupes market their plays to audiences. And I found a lot of success in designing posters and creating ad campaigns for these theaters. And so as I continued to go on and try to make, a career for myself doing various things, I would make money doing these small design or rebranding jobs or website creation work for smaller businesses or small theater troupes. And the skill set that I've developed around digital marketing and branding is largely self-taught. I was working in college, actually. I was working side by side with the marketing department for the School of Fine Arts to build some of the marketing
Nice.
campaigns I was doing because they found out that I was so interested in it that I think they saw free labor in me. But I was like, oh, cool. It's like a free internship that I didn't apply for. They're going to just teach me how they do all of their, which they did. And I was super grateful for it. I was very much interested in how marketing made things happen. I was very interested in how messaging could attract or entice people to do or say or, try things they might not have tried. I've always been interested in that. So anyway, you were working for this small Scottish agency, but then eventually you transitioned into working for Google or at Google, or what's the story there?
Yeah, so the agency work was good, right? But I wasn't making enough money. So what happened was I ended up looking for, I always liked LinkedIn and like applying for jobs on LinkedIn specifically because I knew that they were slightly better quality than other places. And then I found this job. It was called like digital skills coach, and I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting because technically my English and American Studies degree, like technically I'm an English and history teacher, so like I have a passion for education. So I'm like, that sounds interesting. And they were asking for digital marketing skills, which I had, and I was listening to a lot of podcasts on like social media marketing and Facebook ads. I applied. They called me, and they're like, it's going to be for Google, by the way. I'm like, excuse me, what? You mean like the Google? Yeah. Like, okay, that's interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, and we were teaching like thousands of people, like, digital marketing skills. Like I was brought on because of my Facebook ads experience. I was also very involved in organic social media marketing, specifically Instagram at the time. So that's how I got the gig. But, kid you not, it was difficult to get it because, I was teaching alongside like university professors, people who have been doing this far longer than I ever had. So I was, the guy in the room with the least experience type thing, being, just 20 something. But I had a lot of passion and I was super interested in the thing. So I actually knew a lot.
What made you eventually make the shift back to an agency?
Okay. So this is where it's going to get interesting because the majority of my advertising portfolio actually comes from my work at Tier 11, the agency. So basically what happened was I was listening to their podcast. At the time, they were the only company that did a podcast specifically on Facebook ads. And it was the most technical, most data-driven. They were like the top podcasters talking about Facebook ads specifically. And I want to learn more. And obviously, like I was always a very keen learner. On one of the episodes, they're like, do you know how to run ads? You want to work for us? So I ended up applying for the job because I heard on the podcast that they happen to hire and they don't really care where you live. Like I was going through the interview process for probably like 3 or 4 months. And they ended up giving me the gig. So obviously it was a learning curve. Again, I found myself in a room with people who have significantly more experience than me. I had to put on my big boy pants and learn as fast as possible, which I did.
And so while with this digital agency, this digital marketing agency, I mean, eventually you built up a portfolio that is the equivalent of 7.5 million in ad spend. But how long did that take?
I was working for them for almost 3 years. I was given like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger accounts. Eventually, I was overseeing $1 million per month before I left. But I was performing, and and eventually the reason why I left was like I wanted to manage bigger and bigger and bigger accounts because I just wanted to learn more, and they just didn't have the bigger accounts. So I decided that perhaps it'd be a good move to find private clients, right? Because I'm like, let's just do freelancing.
As an ad manager, like as a specific
media buyer, doing media buying. So I had a very versatile portfolio, and when I started reaching out to people, that's how I, initially I wanted to focus on supplements because that's what I had. I had a lot of experience in managing supplement accounts, but eventually I, switched gear and the story. I mean, that's how we met.
Right. And so eventually, I mean, you're working with this digital marketing agency, you decide that you want to go it your own, you want to freelance as a media buyer. And at that time, it looks like in our notes here about this conversation, you want to talk a little bit about some of your influences, some of the content you were consuming at that time as you were going it on your own. Yeah.
So I was always into business, very much so. But I had to discover Gary Vee on YouTube to how oh wait, like I actually want to do business, because he opened my eyes up. In Hungary, owning a business had very negative connotations at the time. A lot of people didn't really see it as a very honest career path. So I had all these negative ideas about owning a business and running a business. Watching Gary Vee open up my eyes, and oh crap, like you can actually be kind and still be a business owner. The average person had this idea that running a business means like you need to get into stuff that a little corruption here and there, and I just didn't like that idea. Watching Gary Vee's content opened up my eyes to a lot of things, and that's how I developed interest in business.
And is that eventually how you found the content of Alex Hormozi, who I know you also really are a big fan of?
So, okay. What happened was actually the person I used to work with, the senior media buyer who trained me, she was actually a major Alex Hormozi fan. I'm like, who is this guy? I just naturally started watching more and more and more of his content, because I'm like, oh my God, this person is actually knows his stuff. I actually met him as well in Vegas, not too long ago. That's when we met the first time. Right?
Yeah, it's when we met in person for the first time.
Everything I know is self-taught.
Yeah.
I have no MBA. I'm the first business owner in the family.
I mean, and it's also to what you were just talking about. I think it's cool that now we're in a time of information being so readily available that anybody who wants to get into anything can really become an expert, so long as they're able to find resources like you have, who you can depend on, whose values also align with yours. You know, part of how I think we ended up crossing paths too is through that networking sort of way of doing things. Because obviously you're in Thailand, I'm in Los Angeles, California. This was probably 3.5 years ago now that we were introduced to one another. Am I right? 3 years ago?
No, maybe not that long, but it feels like 3 years. It definitely feels like
3 years. Oh my God. Okay. So, but anyway, I mean, basically, eventually, you in your freelancing work as a media buyer were connected with a fitness coaching startup that was in need of some help, because they were doing well. They had just decided to bring on a COO who was reorganizing things, and they had established some success with a boosted post on Facebook. It was just a video that they were boosting that was 90 seconds long. And they brought you on to help them build out basically an entire ad strategy, right?
Not only that, I was actually brought on as a media buyer, but there were expectations regarding giving them advice on operations. I was brought on as a media buyer, but they also needed help with creating a landing page of some sort. Right. Because I also have tons of experience in conversion rate optimization, which is what happens when you're a media buyer. When you spend so much money, you have to learn sort of everything. So you become somewhat of a generalist almost, because you have to understand copy. You also have to understand creative, but also data analysis and operations. Because if your ad strategy sucks, then that is going to have an impact on how the business is run. Let's say you're spending $200,000 per month on ads, and there's no return on investment, and the business is not viable. You know, the business is going to go bankrupt. There's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and you have to learn a lot. And it is inevitable that you're going to learn things like conversion rate optimization as well. And I was brought on to sort of consult on everything. And then later on, probably a couple of months in, you came into the picture, right?
Yeah, they were seeking a video editor, which I have done all kinds of design work. Video editing was always something that I did. Again, self-taught as a passion project, is something I did for fun. I would do it as a favor to people if they ever needed any sort of something cut together for something, which is how my brother-in-law, who was a client of this fitness coach and had become this fitness coach's director of sales, my brother-in-law reached out to me and said, my friend who has this business is in need of a designer to edit some videos. Is that something you think you could do for them? I said yes. I think that's when I was introduced to you for the first time.
Yeah.
You came with a very clear assignment for me.
I was the one who actually requested someone like
yeah, you were the one who said we need a designer.
Told the CEO, like, okay, we need someone who can actually get this done. Because I was telling the COO, hey, by the way, I actually trained a lot of people. If the person has, even if the person doesn't have agency experience, it doesn't matter. I trained like people who only had organic social media experience, and then she became one of the best art directors at the agency, and that happened over the course of like 3 months, 4 months. So I had tons of experience in training people. So I told the COO, we need someone who can actually get this done. And then I send you a video, the boosted post.
That's right.
You mentioned earlier. And then I'm like, hey dude, can you chop this up and, just figure out like what to do with it? Some of the things that they showed in the video were going against policy.
Yeah, you couldn't have before and after
pictures
photos, which
are not allowed.
Were huge for them. Mm-hmm. They were a fitness coaching company, so that was yep. One of your first points in coming to me with this video. Was you were like, we need to cut out the before and after stuff, and then we want variations of this video cut up into lengths. I think it was a 90-second video, and you wanted to cut into various 30-second versions, various 15-second versions, and then just a couple of 1-minute versions. And so I did. I mean, like, and at the time, I was truly just being brought in by my brother-in-law as a freelancer. I wasn't thinking much about the job other than just making a little extra coin. And I remember, like, as I was cutting the video, because the initial video, the boosted posted video, was actually really well produced. It was really well put together for the most part. Like, they hired
like, it was a good
quality.
It was.
Yeah, they hired a quality production team to make that video happen. So what I was cutting was good, and I was having fun cutting it. And eventually, you shared those ads for the company, we saw some success that they weren't expecting, I don't even think.
I mean, we already knew that the person we were helping, like, he definitely had this wild charisma, right? We already, like, the company already made pretty good money before we jumped on board, but the issue was the person was responding to these messages on his phone, and we wanted to create like some systems that would actually allow him to perhaps step away from the sales and focus more on coaching. Right. And that was really the idea, right? To have some type of, like proper operations set up for the company. And, we were doing everything from scratch. There were no ads before. I mean, there was no ad account, no Facebook pixel, nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of my story with this engagement was that I truly thought, I'm going to cut these videos together. Maybe occasionally they'll throw another job my way. But I don't think at the time I thought that y'all were going to come to me with a bigger ask. And then you did. You came to me with the ask for this landing page design, which then included eventually the creation of a video sales letter, which we had to put at the beginning of this landing page. I mean, it became this really sort of exciting job for me as a freelancer who loves to do all of it. I love to do the video editing. I love to get my hands on the branding. I love to create web pages. I love to talk about how all of it's connected and figuring out how the branding can tell its story in every medium that we decide to tell our story through. I'm just a geek for that kind of stuff. So when you said like they need a landing page, we're also now talking about maybe implementing more for their organic content. Suddenly I was like, oh, no way. It wasn't long before they brought me on full time as the creative director for the company, which was, and then at that point, you and I were in full swing building out this it was a relatively simple landing page, but the funnel that we ended up building, testing, and sort of, I don't want to say perfecting, but the funnel that we eventually got to peak performance, that funnel, we were doing a lot of work toward this really exciting goal of both attracting new clients for this coach, but also helping him get his messaging about what he was doing for his clients out there to a broader audience. And we were doing that. The reach was happening, right?
We were doing that. This is exactly what I was known for at the agency. My senior media buyer always told me, Matt doesn't make mistakes. I never overlooked anything. Like, it was always 95% correct, and maybe like she had to make some little changes. So like I was going into to this engagement with that mindset that everything has to be in place correctly. Everything. And this is how actually Company Growth Partner was born. We came together and we were not really copying anything. Like, we weren't like, oh, let me have a look at this other landing page. Actually, prior to that, I never ran a funnel like that. I went into it like fully intuitively. I went, okay, cool, that might work. Our best stuff comes out of, oh, let's try it, right? And then, oh, crap, it actually works, right? It was a hypothesis, and it was a $2 million hypothesis, okay?
Yeah,
So it was a very simple funnel, and it freaking worked. Why? Because we had everything in place to make it work.
Mm-hmm. And you and I also were there to sort of steward this coach, through the entire process of figuring out how to build this thing from the bottom up in a way that I think was useful, because he was tempted to change his mind a little bit here and there, right? While we were still figuring it out. And we were there to say, let's just get this thing done. Let's get it in a way that we can put it out there and see what kind of traction it gets. And ultimately, we had developed, I thought it was a pretty beautifully put together, it was a free ebook for them to get free nutritional and fitness advice. And they were being directed to the landing page where there was, an introductory video. And then they were going to be able to download the ebook by just giving us their email. Then we had their information.
And actually, it's a good idea to talk about that ebook, because that is where things started to shift. There was a series of disagreements between the COO and the founder. And eventually, they parted ways. And because the COO knew me and he brought me on, and we're like, okay, cool, so what are we going to do? Well, we will keep doing what we were doing, and we'll figure it out, right? And that is when it went crazy, because we historically had an issue with show rate, if you remember. That was always like a big sticking point, because
we could attract possible clients, we could get them onto the sales team's calendars, but getting them to show up for these appointments, let alone actually pay for the service, we were struggling to get that locked in.
But at that time, we didn't really have the socioeconomic data to understand why those people they were not showing up for a reason, right? And we didn't really understand that, because we had to do something else in order to scale up. And that is exactly what happened. We tried the lead magnet, but it was way too general, and it was pulling in the kind of the type of people who were actually not showing up for the calls. So all of a sudden, we had a lot of calls, no calls. That is exactly why we stepped away from using lead magnets at all, because it felt like we were pulling in the wrong type of people. Mm-hmm. And when we made further changes to the funnel and we introduced KPIs, because that was like a major sticking point, that there were no KPIs, nothing was tracked on the sales side, right? We were closing the deals, but nothing was tracked. So we didn't really know whether close rate was good or bad, or we had absolutely no idea. So we had to establish basic KPIs, close rate, show rate, and somehow measure that. And we were able to do that. And then eventually we put together custom reporting and all that. But probably the most important thing was we found a way to qualify people. Mm-hmm. And because we did that, we had the information on what kind of people were signing up. We were able to go from a 50% qualifying rate to an 80% qualifying rate. Mm-hmm. And from March, company was doing like $100,000 on average. By June, the company did $300,000. We literally tripled the monthly top line revenue for the business over the course of 4 months. 4. Mm-hmm. We were literally right on track to like 500,000, but that is when changes happened. The founder wanted to shift direction and change the offer, and because of that, but
it becomes ultimately part of like I feel like this ultimately becomes part of what we focus our work on sometimes with our clients now, because we've seen the way that when you build up a strategy that is going to work or is working, And then you decide all of a sudden as it's working that instead of cranking that up a little bit or making adjustments to that strategy to see how it could increase things even further, some clients will be tempted to instead be like, okay, cool, that worked. Let's try something totally different now. And you're like, well, wait. And I feel like we've seen that temptation to shift so heavy on so many clients. And it's like, if there's one thing that we can end up encouraging people, it's to stay the course with something that they know works. And then eventually, after, a lot of discussion and thought, things can be shifted in incremental ways. But some of these coaches and some of these clients are so tempted to make large shifts so fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, it all comes back to, so two things here. One, from an operational perspective, it wasn't like the first rodeo. Personally, I've done similar things while I was working at the agency, but they were more, these strategic operational things were more related to the ad accounts. And I already had like tons of success on the operations side, but we had an agreement with the CEO. I'm not, he's dealing with ops. I'm not touching it. Like, I'm not involved there. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yes, to your point, especially in coaching, because the industry is so new and it's kind of lax, like define coaching. It depends on who's doing it, right? And like what the offer is, like there aren't really set rules. Some coaches tend to feel that perhaps the grass is greener on the other side, and they look at other coaches and they make changes because they think it's going to be so much better. But it also comes down to the fact that people who are good at coaching, they tend to be more feeling and, emotional type people. Not in every case, but what I've seen, they have that. Charisma really comes from like having that, like understanding how to be empathetic with people and like, building a relationship with them. And because of that, the founder and us kind of had this, we saw the business very differently. And he didn't really see the risk in making the changes because, again, it's very different when you're the founder and head coach of a business and when you're looking at the data and understanding that by making that change.
I mean, we saw with this example you were discussing too, like part of it is that if you do find some success, especially early on, and you are a coach, it can be exciting to maybe instead of, or actually, I feel like this is accurate. The conversations quickly shifted. So we were seeing success, right? In just a few months' time, we had tripled top line revenue month to month, like you had just mentioned. We were seeing actually a lot of success and there was a lot of excitement. And I feel like that conversation around that excitement started to be about, let's throw gasoline on this fire. And then the conversation around what the gasoline was started to shift and started to become kind of confused. And suddenly there was a lot of conversation about changing all of the strategies entirely, and that change, that big shift would be the gasoline on the fire we'd created. And we were there the entire time suggesting, no, actually, we should just probably amp up a little bit more of what we're already doing, and we can then try. But it was one of those things where you can only push a client, and these coaches know this, they work with clients. You can only push a client you work with to a point. Everybody's got autonomy. Business owners are going to do what they want to do with their business. That said, if you're a business owner and you're looking for any help with your digital marketing efforts or anything on the operations side of things, you should reach out to Company Growth Partner. We would love to talk to you about your business, right, Matt?
Absolutely. Send us a message and let's have a conversation because you never know. Like maybe you're one step away from having a very similar funnel built out and we do everything from scratch. Like we don't do anything cookie cutter. So
no, that's part of the whole thing too about this story that's useful and why I think it's exciting to talk about the fact that you and I have decided to continue to work together is because in that environment where the CEO of the company, the coach that we were working with, was so eager to make a lot of these ego-driven changes very quickly, we were working together to try to adapt our strategies, and our workflow to whatever those major changes were. And we did. We did it
And
very
we
well.
actually, just for everyone to understand, we were actually helping this coach make those changes because I think both of us respected him so much that
Yeah.
we were like, you know what? We totally understand. Please understand if you were going to make these changes, that is going to have a lasting impact on how things are panning out. But let's make things happen, right?
And we did. And we always did make things happen. We're adaptable.
Exactly. Now, having said that, the business grew so fast, right? And this coach in particular, like he was a first time business owner. We needed to have conversations around something called attribution, which is such an advanced marketing topic. The science of attribution is so complicated that especially for someone who's who has only been in business for so long, it's difficult enough to have it with an 8-figure business, let alone someone who is, very new to digital marketing in general, right? Like, I think that also created a lot of confusion around what had to happen on the strategy side because attribution was such an unfamiliar topic. There were a lot of technical elements in the business that we implemented to ensure that everything stayed in place. That there were really like two sides of the business, right? Like there was like the coaching and sales side, and whatever we did on the operations side, like the very heavy
Operations and
technical
marketing started to be its own, its own office as well. That's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was a successful engagement. We were very proud of the work that we did. We are very proud of the work that we did for that client. $2 million, absolutely, in 13 months.
I mean, let's be honest here. We definitely had an in-house agency running the show, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's very, 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 very rare.
And if you feel you might need some of those skills for your business, you should reach out to Company Growth Partner. Send us a message.
100%.
We'll talk to you about your business. We'll see if we can't help you in your digital marketing efforts. And we'll take things to the next level.